Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today as promised for this next video about cast iron, and it's cast iron in regards to your health. Now, if you're interested in my last two videos that I did on cast iron, the first one was about how I like to care for my cast iron, personally how I do it, and the second one was about using cast iron on a glass top stove and can you do it? I'll link to both of those down below. And just a heads up, most of my cooking with my cast iron happens on my wood stove 9 months out of the year, which is usually how long it is that we have fires going in there. And the rest of the time I'm usually cooking on hot plates during the warmer, sunnier months, hooked up to our solar power. So we're making the most out of that. So today I wanted to talk about the iron that gets into your food when you're cooking your cast iron. Is it good for you or is it detrimental to your health? Well, there's a few factors that are going to come into play when you're talking about that. So some of it is going to be in regards to you and your own personal dietary needs. A lot of people, especially women, whether they're premenopause or maybe they're pregnant, maybe they're even pubescent ladies, most women at these different ages in our lives need extra iron in our diet. I don't really want to say extra, but we usually need a little bit more than other people. Now, I am not one of those people and never have been, and I'll get to that in a minute. And if you're one of those people, then yes, cooking with cast iron is, in my personal opinion, the best way to add a little more iron to your food, but also be looking into foods that are naturally high in iron, like spinach and liver. I hate liver myself, but thankfully I don't need iron, so I can avoid that. But these are going to be the best ways to add more iron to your diet. My personal opinion is that you should avoid any kind of iron supplements. Most of them are going to be too much iron or in a form that will be bad for you, especially anything, I don't care what kind of supplement it is, that's put into a tablet form. In most cases, I don't want to say all because I could be wrong, but in most cases, they're bound together by ingredients that are bad for your health. And also, especially when you're talking about vitamins in a tablet form, the process of putting them in a tablet form actually destroys much of the properties, so you're not actually getting that amount of IUs that is claimed. That might have been what was in there to start with, but once it's put in that tablet form, the IU amount is actually lowered incredibly. So anytime you're taking supplements, you should always be looking at a capsule form. And yes, you can get iron in a capsule form, and this is only if you absolutely have to take more. And I'd be making sure your doctor's doing thorough blood tests on you before prescribing any kind of iron. A doctor who's actually doing a thorough blood test is going to know exactly what to look for. If they do just the standard blood test, they might look at you and say, you're anemic, you need iron, and they could be dead wrong. Now let me share a little bit about myself. A lot of you know I am of Italian descent. I wasn't born or raised in Italy. I only know a little bit of Italian, but I do have Italian blood in me, and what came with that, quite literally speaking, when I say blood, is the thalassemia, which is a common, I hate the word disorder. It's just maybe anomaly or whatever that is commonly found in people from Asia or the Mediterranean area. So Greeks, Italians, and so on. And there's different forms of thalassemia. I am thalassemia minor, and that doesn't mean being a thalassemia means you're unhealthy. It just means you have to be a lot more careful when it comes to iron consumption, and certainly never ever eat foods that have been fortified with iron or take any kind of iron supplements. Now, when I was in my early 20s, even though I knew I was thalassemic, I just knew that because they had done all the tests on me when I was in my early teens, and it takes a lot of blood. I don't know if it still does these days, but it takes quite a bit of vials of blood to be able to do the proper testing to find out if you're thalassemia minor, as I am in my case, and so, or at least my firstborn son. I know he is. I'm not positive about my youngest. I just assume that he is. So I didn't know enough, though, in my early 20s when I was it was during that time that I was being a vegan, and I randomly passed out when my boyfriend and I went to the zoo. And so I thought, well, I should go to the doctor, see if there's anything going on. And the doctor found out I was anemic and prescribed iron. So, okay, me still being kind of young and stupid and not knowing enough about the thalassemia, I started taking it. And then I started getting weaker and more tired and ill. And then I got on the phone and was talking to my mom and told her what was going on. And she says, you're not supposed to be taking iron. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Why I didn't know that? Maybe I wasn't listening. So I immediately stopped taking it and I was fine. Now I think the whole thing about me passing out, I had a couple other dizzy spells during that time, had nothing to do with my lack of iron or too much iron. It had to do with the fact that as I was trying the vegetarian diet, it just wasn't enough for me. And so I had to go back to eating animal products. And I went through the same thing when I tried being vegan. And I was very strict. I was very careful. I was really trying to make sure I was getting everything I needed, all the right nutrients, and making my own cheeses and stuff like that, and still ended up having issues. So I know it's not the right diet for me, and maybe specifically because I am thalassemic. So those that want to try to push their personal diet onto everyone else and say this is the only right and moral way you should eat, you're wrong to do that. It might be right for you to eat that way, but it's not right for everyone else. So people need to stop the sanctimony and stop trying to push certain diets that cut out whole food groups on everyone else. You have to do what's right for you and your own body, and you need to learn to listen to it. And that's what I had to do through the years. So I'm going to throw out another example. Years after that, I think it was in my 30s, and I was very much into taking supplements. And I was taking a B complex because I was big on taking B vitamins. So I was taking these B complex every single day. And as I was taking them, I don't know how long I'd been taking them, but I've been taking them for a little while, maybe a month or so. And during that time, found myself getting weaker, more tired, harder and harder for me to get up in the morning, and just generally feeling just ill and really struggling with when I was trying to teach dance. I felt like I couldn't do anything. I just felt just like I was really dragging, and it reminded me of how I felt when I was taking the iron supplements before. And so I saw my bottle of B complex and decided I better check that out, and I got to reading the ingredients, and here's what I didn't even pay attention to, is that it had iron added to it. So, and it was actually a considerable amount of iron. And so immediately I stopped taking them. However, someone in that with as much iron as I had built up in my system and in my tissues and in my blood, it took quite a long time for me to get back to normal again, to feeling the way I should been feeling. And because my body, it took all that time for it to eliminate that, to get it out of my system. And so yes, depending on your health, you can get too much iron and it can be deadly. But I think it's only going to be in a certain types of people. Now, the people that have to be most careful are not so much people who are thalassemia minor like myself, are people who have hemochromatosis. That condition causes an increased amount of iron to be absorbed into your system. And again, too much iron can be deadly over time. Now, when it comes to cooking with cast iron, so after saying all that, and now you know the health condition I have, the thalassemia, which it's just a trait that's passed down through certain family groups. It doesn't mean I'm sickly, but it does mean I have to be careful of my iron intake. And so I was a little nervous when I started making the complete change over to cast iron from cooking with Teflon, because I knew I had to get rid of Teflon. And the actual name for that is polytetrafluoroethylene. It's very long, but the brand name is Teflon. But anyway, that applies to any of that's using that on their pans. You should be tossing all of that stuff. That no matter what your health condition is, I would say cast iron is going to be a far healthier choice than using any of those. And you watch that stuff. If anyone who's ever cooked with it, what happens after about a year to 2 years, no matter how careful, no matter what types of utensils you're using in it, that stuff starts flaking off and getting in your food. And it's very toxic. Okay, so one of the key components of it is fluorine, which is one of the most toxic chemicals on the periodic table. That's where we get fluoride, by the way, which is also why you should not be consuming fluoride internally. Now that you know that about me and my personal condition, once I made that full change to cast iron, I know what it feels like to have too much iron in my system. I know how it makes me drag, and I'm tired all the time, and I start getting fatigued and just feeling generally terrible. Never have had an issue with cooking with the cast iron. Now, I think there's a couple of reasons why. I think by cooking with cast iron, any iron that's going to get into the food is going to be, it's not going to be in such a great degree as you're going to get by taking a supplement. And also it's in a far more natural form anyway. It also depends on how you're using your cast iron and what you're cooking in it. So if you're talking about making any kind of tomato sauces, whether it be a barbecue sauce, an Italian sauce for your pizza, spaghetti, lasagna, anything that's highly acidic, and if you're using that in your cast iron, that is going to, right there, is going to increase the amount of iron that gets from the pan into your food and the length of time that you're cooking the food in the cast iron. So the longer it's sitting in there and cooking, the more iron is going to get into the food. Now, when it comes to making any kind of sauces like that, I never use cast iron. I'm always using stainless steel. But I do a lot of sautés in my cast iron pans where I add a little bit of my homemade wine or mead for the sake of sautéing. So even though that adds a certain amount of acidicness to it, I'm not cooking it in there for such a long period of time that it's something I got to be concerned about. And also having a very good seasoning on your cast iron is also going to help prevent too much iron from getting into your food. Now again, if you're one that needs that iron, this can be a good way to do that. So if you're concerned about, like maybe you have the hemochromatosis, and so you're very concerned about your iron intake, maybe you should avoid cast iron and just stick with cooking with stainless steel, but that doesn't mean go over to the Teflon, okay? That everybody should be getting rid of that and just tossing it all. One of the things I love about cast iron, it'll last for 100 years at least. And as long as you're taking good care of it, you're not going to have to throw it away in 1 or 2 years like you do with your Teflon pans. Now, generally speaking, in my own opinion, especially based on my own experience and my own problems with getting too much iron and knowing what that feels like, I honestly believe that cast iron is going to be one of the safest and healthiest choices for cooking with for just about anyone. So again, I'm being very general. If you have any health issues that you know you need to really watch your iron intake, then I recommend just do some really heavy research into it and weigh out those costs. Oh, and I wanted to add any of these little covers that you see, I actually have a video out on how to make your own. The video includes both how to make the skillet handle cover as well as the pot and pan handle cover. But I also do sell them on our Etsy store, which is always the first link right at the top that you'll see in the description box. But I will also link to that it's an old video that I put out on how to make the covers yourself, and I will put that in the description box as well. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and it got you thinking, that helped answer some of the questions. And if you're interested in more videos that I cover frequently asked questions, I will link to that whole playlist down below to see if you can find any answers to some specific questions that you've had. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.